Oh, there it goes. It says you are live. Yeah, I don't see it streaming yet. Oh, there it goes.
Should be.
All right,
Should be.
we're good.
We're good?
Yeah,
Sweet. What's up, man?
not too much. We got some exciting data to review.
For sure, for sure. Mr. Jerome Powell decided to shake up the markets again this afternoon, so figured we'd give a little rundown as far as what he said, what to expect with interest rates. I'm gonna kind of run through just some of the highlight points that he had mentioned. Was obviously anybody that's been to the grocery store has seen that we haven't had much easing of inflation recently. So he said there was a lack of future progress on inflation, the labor market, which is kind of how uh, that's what they kind of want to crash, even though they don't want to say it. Labor market's very strong right now. It's going to keep them from cutting rates. Rising immigration. He's very careful around that issue, but he did mention it. Rising labor force participation. One of the things that I'm going to show here in a bit is one of the things they don't disclose a lot of. One of those beautiful government reports that they like to hide is the labor participation rate isn't new people in the job market. It's there's more people that have second jobs, part-time jobs than ever in history right now, which is a sign of a recession. The one of the things that he had mentioned also was recent data has not given us greater confidence to cut rates. So he basically said they are not planning on cutting rates this year. Is basically what he said. Now, I don't know whether he's playing political games with the markets because if he came out today and said we're going to cut rates in November, 99% chance the markets would rally out of control and there would just be tons of speculation and it wouldn't help inflation at all. So I don't know if he's trying to scare the markets or if he really thinks they won't cut rates this year, which we'll dive a little deeper into those numbers here in a few minutes. But that was one thing, and then the last thing I wanted to mention that he talked about was, let's see, he said the inflation that has arisen in the last 6 to 12 months has not only been just from overheated demand, but there's also constrained supply. So a lot of the stuff going on overseas, energy, oil, things like that are driving inflation up quite a bit. Electricity prices, all that good stuff. So essentially, what I kind of big picture took out of this conference that he had was they are probably not looking at cutting rates for probably another year. I really think that it will be through spring of next year before they even think about cutting interest rates. If you go look at any time in the past throughout the last 100 and some odd years that the Fed's been established, they always start raising rates too late and they always keep them high for way too long. Almost always cause a recession. Almost never have a soft landing, which is kind of why I mentioned earlier with a record number of Americans having part-time jobs right now.
Right.
So essentially, he came out and said, 'cause there's been a lot of speculation in the market over the last 2 weeks or so, thinking that, rates are going to be cut in November. And he essentially took the chance that he had to get on a podium today to squash that. So we went from 7 rate cuts to no rate cuts, essentially,
Yeah.
or
So
whatever that article was that was flying around there at the beginning of the year.
yeah, so let's just assume no rate cuts, right? You and I are both in the mortgage and real estate space. So, you know, how do we advise from here, right? That's the big question moving forward, right? I have my my ideas on how I plan to advise moving forward. But there's been so many people, even some of my clients who've been hanging on this like headline that rates are going to drop. And again, I
Mhm.
think you and I proved last week, like this is the new normal, right? The new normal is going to be 5.5 to 7.5, right?
100%.
And, there's going to be some variance in there, but
Mhm.
if that's where we're headed and that's where we are now, right? So what advice? Let's start with the first time home buyer, right? The person who's got out of college a couple years ago, 2, 3, 4 years into their first career, making good money, might be living at home, saving a decent amount, and they were ready to go this year. What advice are we giving them?
The first piece of advice that I would give is, and this is something I actually struggle with myself, which we were talking a little bit about earlier, is the over-analyzation of things and the consuming of too much data and too much information. Uh, Stay off the internet as much as you can. And I don't say that to be misinformed. I say that because I think the statistic I saw the other day was that 90% of economists that guess when the Fed is going to cut or raise rates, they're wrong 90% of the time. 90% of the time. So that means that all these people are just talking just to get the hot air out of their head, for the most part. And so the next thing I would say is not to get too deep into the woods of not to get too deep into the woods of how the rates work, but essentially, um, would you with savings accounts right now, you can go get 5% interest on a savings account right now, and there's no risk, right? Would you rather go there to get 5% in a savings account with no risk, or would you rather loan the government that has a out of control spending problem and a very chaotic political landscape? Would you rather loan them your money for 10 years for 5% return?
Yeah, I'll take the savings.
I'll take the savings. And so because of that, we were talking the other day about 10-year treasuries is kind of what we use to track the mortgage rate, and what it is those are going to have to go higher in order for them to issue those treasuries out. So I would just say that at the end of the day, um, there's no way that rates can come down right now or anytime soon unless there's some type of black swan event that happens, simply because the return can't even outpace inflation with where it's at right now. Nobody's
Hmm.
going to lock up their money for 5 to 10 years because of that. And then number two is I actually want to show you this. So this is every year that we have had inflation. Okay, check this out. So in this right now is very comparative to the 70s, right? So if you look at the 70s, I want you to look at how long when rates went sky high because of the out of control inflation. Look at these numbers. They climbed for 10 years, a decade. They kept going up and kept going up and kept going up and kept going up. But more importantly, what I want you to look at is the change in home prices. Everybody thinks that, oh, nobody can afford houses nowadays. And as many people as there are that are like that can't afford houses, there are still plenty of people that can. And we're
Hmm.
so short on supply. I mean, just look at this. Rates over doubled in this 10-year stretch. Over doubled. And
Hmm.
look at the change in home prices. And some of the highest interest rates that we've ever seen, home prices went up the most, right? So high interest rates does not mean home prices come down.
Right.
That
Yeah.
that that would be the other thing, and I think that we're probably on pace to have something similar to that happen right now. Is that interest rates keep going up and keep going up and keep going up, just simply because, like we talked about, there's not enough return for anyone to take that kind of risk, and
Right.
that does not mean that home prices are coming down. History always repeats itself, always.
So what would you say to someone who says, "Hey, Cody, we're not in the 70s. Things are different. Times are different. Financial
I
markets are
would sh-
different."
I would show you a chart and I would show you seasonalities in history to where it almost 100% of the time it happens the same every time.
Right.
People always go and they forget history and they forget history and they forget history. '08 was more like the 30s. Right now is more like the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
'08 didn't have sky high inflation and sky high mortgage rates and all those things. We're way higher in rates now than we were in '07, '08. History always repeats itself. '08 was literally, if you go look at the charts, they almost hide each other. The lines almost hide each other if you go look at the charts on what happened.
Right.
That was a once every 100-year ordeal. So, I mean, literally everything that happened in the 70s has happened the same today. All the inflation to where it wound up tapering off a little bit and then actually coming back hotter than it was before. All those things have happened. And so, and the other, the other, the other comeback I would have for that is that you've been waiting how long for rates to come down or how long for home prices to come down? If you waited and history does repeat itself, you'll be waiting for 40 years just like the last 40 years
Yeah.
for
Okay.
a very, very, very small blip in home prices.
Right. Yeah. I'm just thinking not every market's the same, right? We still, but the fact remains we still are no supply, right? We still have no supply
Yep.
in most major markets. So
Mm-hmm.
um, we are going to see home prices continue to rise even with rates at this and if not higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep. So the last graph I'll show you here is all these people. This goes back all the way to 1942, and the only thing anybody can think about is right here in this 4 year time span. They forget about everything else behind here. Look at all these years that you missed. You missed 10%, 10%, 14%, 14% just to save yourself on 12%.
mhm.
It doesn't make much sense financially, right? So everybody focuses right here, but that's only happened one time
Right.
since this data has been tracked.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I can speak for us in California, right? The home prices aren't going down right now. Some markets might adjust, especially in like the super high luxury markets.
Hmm?
But overall, we're still expecting 5% growth this year, right? And so housing is becoming more and more unaffordable as each year that passes.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely is.
I think if you are a, let's just say, young first time home buyer, I think you have a moment right now to kind of just get your finances in order, right?
Hmm.
Look at what your outflow is, look at what your income is. How can you increase your income? How can you cut expenses? Then go into I'm prepared to do a home purchase,
Yep.
right? Like go into it with a solid foundation because the impulsive, I went to an open house, I love it, I think I can do it, that's not only going to create stress on you to see if you can do it, but that's going to create a lot of financial stress 2 to 3 years down the road. The
Absolutely.
thing that I'm seeing a lot of clients come to us is they didn't understand when they got their first mortgage, and this wasn't through us, this is through other lenders. They didn't understand that their DTI was at 50%. And so they're confused in why someone told them 2 years ago they could qualify for this mortgage, not knowing that we went off gross income to qualify them. Now their expenses are up anywhere from 10 to 20% just due to inflation.
Hmm.
And so they're like, how could have I afford this 2 years ago? I'm probably making a little bit more money than I was, and I'm still living paycheck to paycheck. Right? That's where I think taking a moment to set your foundation and understanding no one wants to know what their debt to income ratio is, but when you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's extremely important to know where you stand.
I
Right?
was literally about to say, I was going to go, that's your first problem, is that you think that you're bringing home the same money as you were 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't realize that you're bringing home significantly less money, then you probably shouldn't be buying a house right now until you learn how to budget correctly and manage your monthly inflows and outflows
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah. I also think right now, especially with, I mean, I hate talking about it, but the NAR settlement, National Association of Realtor settlement, but moving forward, your agent is going to be like who you pick, and their strategies and tactics for either buying or selling or going are going to be extremely important. Um,
Absolutely.
we have clients buying right now, but they're selling homes to buy new homes, right? And
Hmm.
they're putting every dollar earned on the sale of their home into their new mortgage to drive down that payment, almost to the point where the rate is irrelevant,
Hmm.
right? Because
Absolutely.
they're making, just one client, she's making 10K a month. Her mortgage payment is 2 grand, but she's dropping every dollar from the sale of that home into the new home. And so she doesn't care that the rates are in the sixes,
Hmm.
right? She just, it's irrelevant. She plans to pay it off in 10 years. So,
Yep.
but you need a good agent who can market your property, get you every dollar. And then on the buy side too is like, where can I find opportunities not on MLS? Because once it hits MLS, it's for everyone.
Yep. I was literally about to say, I was going to say, like that. I know plenty of agents that they know how to find a property for someone. Like even if you go back to 2020 when everybody was paying 30, $40,000 over asking price, right? We all had still had some of those clients that had to have seller concessions. Well, you couldn't go find something on the open market for that. And I know several agents that always got those people in houses because they would go find them an off market deal because that's what they had to do. And you're going to have an agent that's seasoned in that area and that knows how to do that right now, for sure as a buyer or moving forward anyways. You absolutely are.
Yeah, I mean, like the first thing comes to mind is, buying from your landlord. Just asking your landlord, like, hey, would you sell? Right? Would you sell to me? Lease to own could be a good situation right now. If you can like pre-negotiate your terms based on this year or next year.
Yep.
Off markets,
I,
that fits into the off market category, but having a real estate team that can find you a deal off market would be huge.
and there's a lot of opportunity in the multifamily space right now too. Because there has been in that space there has been somewhat I'm not going to call it a correction, but there has been somewhat of a scare in that space just simply because a lot of people over leverage themselves
Mhm.
in 2020 2021. A lot of people over leverage themselves and they have to get out from under those deals. So the last 2 to 3 years you haven't been able to find a duplex or triplex or fourplex. You couldn't find one. But now there's a few more of them out there because some of these investors that got over leveraged are bleeding a little bit. And if you have an agent that can go find those deals, that would be one of the things. And then the other piece would be like right now, I don't care how much money you're making, unless it's well above six figures, you're not going to save enough money to outpace inflation and to outpace just how much more expensive it's going to be until you can save up a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
Unless you're making 250, you can't outpace it with
No.
savings.
Right.
The only way that you can outpace it is through income. Like, and I don't say this to be mean or anything. I just say because it's a reality, and I want people to be like, okay, this is what I got to do to buy a house. I'm not going to save $250 to $500 a month to get there. It's going to take you it's going to take you 5 7 years to get there. You're going to have missed out on 20 30% you know potential appreciation. It's
Yeah.
going to cost you twice that in appreciation what you saved up because every 10 grand that you put down on your loan is only about $50 a month difference in payment.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
it'll it's funny when people ask you that. They're like, what if I put down 20,000 instead of 10? I'm like, it's gonna piss you off. It's gonna change $45.
I know. I know.
It just it doesn't outpace it.
I know they call us millennials the instant gratification generation, right? But I think there's something to be said about starting small on your real estate purchases and maybe doing 2 or 3 purchases before you get to your forever home,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're right, time in the market beats time in the market. And so if you can
Mm-hmm.
get in, even if it's small, get in small, earn, let's say 4 to 7% on average per year on your home and trade up every 3 to 5 years.
Yep, absolutely. You cannot time the market. A good example of that is me. I sold a lot of stock last year while it was down because I just knew that the economy was collapsing. I just knew it. Well, I was down about 25%. I liquidated about 50%. And guess what happened? I missed out on about 40% return since then. And
Mm-hmm.
I study it every single day. It is impossible to time the markets. You have to ride all the waves. If you look at any chart, it does this right here. It has little dips and it slowly goes up over time. And sometimes it has smaller corrections, but most of the time it goes up.
Yeah.
I was a prime example of that. What would you say? What advice would you have for the person that, because there's a lot of people that feel stuck in that 2 to 3% interest rate right now, that are just
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not moving, I'm not getting rid of it. What would you say they need to be looking for, or doing right now in this environment?
Yeah, I had a consult over the weekend and we went through this. I have a calculator that we built that shows side by side comparisons of the current house and what it would rent for. So we run rental comps in our consult.
Mm-hmm.
That's my big thing right now is like converting your home to a rental property is such an awesome hack versus going out and buying an investment property.
Yep.
Many reasons. One, you're probably sitting on a super low interest rate. You're also probably sitting on a lower loan amount than when you purchased it, hopefully, right? And rents have been climbing over the last 4 years that you're probably going to cash flow really, really well. This client was going to cash flow after expenses $1,500 a month. You
Mm-hmm.
couldn't go out and buy an investment property right now, a single family home in California, and cash flow $1,500 a month unless you paid cash.
There's nowhere in the country that you can cash flow a property for more than $100 a month right now with these interest rates.
Right.
You,
And
you just
so
can't.
it's just it's just a great opportunity. Convert that home to a rental, right? They have enough equity to pull out 200K, still be at 75% loan to value. That's pretty safe, right? That 200K they can then take and they plan to use that for a down payment on the purchase of a new home. So if you are
Yep.
sitting on that property, I mean, yeah, keep it, right? Real estate's long-term investment. Keep it as long as you can. We did have to look at different scenarios though, right? Because they are concerned with cost of living. So we looked at both. If they sold it, they could put, believe it was like 600 grand down on their forever home and get the
Mm-hmm.
monthly payment they want of 3 grand a month. You can pick either way. It's just which way works best for you and in your long versus short term goals. They
Absolutely.
have a
And if you're,
plan of having investment properties forever in the future. And so this is
yeah,
a good starting point. But if you don't want investment properties, sell it. Take all that
yep.
money, put it down on your forever home. Now your payment's super low. You can start building up savings again, start investing that way.
Yep, absolutely. And I think one of the things people sleep on right now is like maybe you're in that first home, you're trying to get out, but just like everybody else, money is a lot tighter every month than it used to be. Just simply because wages have not even come close to staying up with inflation. So one of the things that I was talking to a guy about the other day is he's wanting to move in the next year or two, but he made some silly decisions because he works at a car dealership. So you know how those guys go a lot of times when you work at a car dealership is it's almost a requirement to have $1,000 payment, at least one, right? So we're doing a cash out on his house. His rate went from 4.5 to 6.875, but he's saving $1,500 a month in monthly obligations. Saving $1,500 a month in monthly obligations. He's gonna save up his money, buy something else, And then one other thing people don't think about when you do that, when you do cash that out and you do have that plan, is now all of that money you just put back into that house, that you just increased the loan balance, all that interest you're going to pay on that now is now 100% tax deductible because it's a rental property. You're going to be able to write all of that off. So if you pay five more grand in interest, every single year, that's five more grand you're going to get in a tax write off every year for that interest. And you're going to save yourself in monthly obligations. I think having those creative conversations in advance instead of, like you said earlier, like, hey, let's go look at a house today. Oh my God, I love it. I want to buy it right now.
Yeah.
It needs to be done a little more in advance. What advice would you have for real estate agents right now?
My biggest advice right now is like lean into your lender partners, right? Lean in, learn a little bit more about finance, the economy, where your clients stand, asking a little bit more questions, qualifying questions when you talk to a buyer and seller, right? Make sure that they know like this whole waiting for rates isn't going to happen, right? So let's focus on what we can control. Let's focus on the next phase of life, whether it's, you're buying down, you're buying up, you're trading in. Let's focus on that, right? And think about like the life you'll lead when you get to those outcomes. But that's the biggest thing right now. Lean into your lenders, right? Who can help you with this, who can do buyer consults with you. Help the client feel comfortable, or at least give them a game plan so when they are ready that they are comfortable. Running net sheets, right? There's so many agents I talk to who like don't have a net sheet for their client when they sell, so we don't know, the client doesn't know what they're bringing down, right? Putting down on the next property. So like taking the time and just realize like your clients are going to feel a financial pinch right now, and it's on us to educate and consult and help them get to where they want to be.
Yeah, it's 100% going to make them more emotional during the transaction. 100% is. And then
Oh yeah.
I think one other thing for agents right now is that, like, I know people love helping first-time home buyers, and that's great. And I think that everybody should strive to help those people. But I think with, the environment moving forward, unfortunately, I think the writing's on the wall, and home ownership is kind of it's starting to get a bit out of reach for lower to middle class, right? So I think you're really going to have to refine in like who your ideal client is. And you can still help people buy homes, but just know that if you're chasing that first time home buyer all the time, you're going to be chasing your tail around a lot right now, just simply because, those $40,000 to $50,000 a year earners they're just going to qualify way less of the time now than they used to. Like it was easy for them to buy a house over the last 3 to 4 years, and it was like shooting fish in a barrel for lenders and realtors. And I think those days are gone for
Yeah.
now anyways.
Yeah. I mean,
Unfortunately.
I would say like you have to diversify, right, in your offerings. So that first time
Mhm.
home buyer is going to be hard to serve, right?
Yep.
Selling vacation homes, right? If you sell in the suburbs, you might have to start selling some condos, right?
Yep.
Investment properties, multifamily properties, mix in some commercial knowledge. Like, again, if the demand isn't there for you, take the time to study up and learn a different offering, different property
Yeah.
offering, or different location.
Yep. And one thing I'm working on right now that all agents could do to stay in touch with their database is reach out to people about their escrow accounts on their mortgages. They don't have to know how they work, but the average homeowner's insurance premium went up like 36% this year, and
Mm-hmm.
all property taxes that I know of went up. Like just in Texas, homeowners insurance has gone up 54% in the last 3 years. So there's going to be a lot of people with higher mortgage payments than they anticipated. And
Right.
it'll be a good way for real estate agents to stay in touch with their database right now. Is call them and say, hey, make sure you look at your next mortgage statement and check your escrow account. If it looks like you have a negative balance or if your payment goes up, let me know or let your lender know, or I can call your lender, whatever, so that we can work on that so that you don't get in a bad spot. you can get ahead of it in advance.
Right.
And then you can sneak in sneak in a CMA for them while you're doing it.
Yeah. Do you have any parting words?
I would say my parting words would be, I'm not a pessimist. I'm not also not an optimist. I'm a realist. And anybody that pretends that it's not hard out there is a liar. It's hard, but we're the kind of people that can get through it. And we've all seen, like I said earlier, history repeats itself. There's
Yeah.
always really, really, really good markets on the other side of this when we hang with it.
Right.
And I think, especially right now with all the changes going through the industry, like it's going to take us sticking together a lot more. It's going to take us masterminding more, being there just mentally for each other. You know what I mean? Like you and I over the last year or so haven't talked that much, but over the last month or so we have, just because, like we feel the need, we need some positive reinforcement in our industry. Because if you're anything like me, I consume myself a little too much data probably. And it kind of cripples me, but I would say that it's okay for it to be hard, but it's not okay for you not to do the work when it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. My biggest
That's
thing
all.
is really not being dependent on like the government, right? We can't depend on the Fed to solve our problems. And so we have to take more control into our own hands right now. I used to say,
Yep.
especially earlier, like the silver bullet of low interest rates isn't coming back. So how do we adjust? And I think there's plenty of opportunities out there. It's just taking a little bit more time to understand them and then
Mhm.
moving forward.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The government's not coming to save you. They never have, and they never will.
Hmm.
When you depend on them, that's usually when they do the opposite, is make things worse.
Yeah.
So
Just wanted to
just
see if we get a
remember
comment
that.
from Joe Soto.
Dude,
Oh, he
Joe
just left.
Soto is he's the marketing legend. If he started a marketing agency, I'd quit my job today and go work for him. That's how good I know it would be.
He is. He
He's
is
that
good.
good. He must have
All
gotten
right,
off.
man.
Well, cool, dude. Well, let's do this. Let's do this on a weekly basis or something.
We'll
Bring
try.
some bring some realism and slight positivity. Not too much, but slight positivity.
Okay. Let's do it.
10-4, brother. Have a
See
kick
ya.
ass day.
You
See you,
too.
man.